Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Sales Circle podcast. The Sales Circle podcast is a sales-based podcast. I couldn't possibly say sales any more times if I tried. It's a podcast written, designed for salespeople. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this over on YouTube, then I've no doubt that you're a salesperson, an entrepreneur, a business owner. Perhaps you are someone looking to grow your business. Perhaps you're a sales manager. Ultimately, we have one thing in common. We want to improve your sales. We want to increase our sales. My name is Rob Spence, the Managing Director of Paragon Sales Solutions, and I'm an all-round sales nerd, sales geek. I am an author of multiple sales books, and I'm your host of the Sales Circle. And if you're new to the podcast, then where on earth have you been? This is the podcast where we help you improve your sales. If you're a returning listener or viewer, thank you so much. Just no matter what you are, whether you're new or old, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button. I'm so thankful for you being here. In today's episode, we're going to talk about proven strategies to get you the sale. Put simply, we're going to talk briefly about closing. Look, it's the biggest thing that every salesperson ever needs. It's the biggest thing that every sales manager wants their team to do. It's to close sales. Now, as always, what I will say is this isn't necessarily a sales training. If you do want to work with me either in a group or individually or virtually, then learn more about me, head on over to Paragon Sales Solutions and let's get some sales training in. But the intention of this podcast is that it's going to be around half an hour long. You're going to be driving to your next sales meeting. You are going to be on your way into the sales office. You're going to want to absolutely dominate that sales floor. And hopefully this will give you the insights, the motivation, the skill set to help you succeed today. So without further ado, shall we get into closing? So, look, let's jump straight into it. I don't want to kind of bore you with the ins and outs. We know that closing is so important as salespeople. It's the one thing that every salesperson strives for. It's everything that every salesperson needs to be doing. We need to be closing the sale. Without closing the sale, there's no point in everything else that we do. Some argue that closing is the most important part of sales. I'm on the fence, and please do correct me if I'm wrong. Please do write in and tell me if I am wrong. If you think I'm wrong, I genuinely think that if we do every other part of the sales process right, in terms of relationship development, qualifying, objection handling, prospecting, and everything else in between, then lo and behold, closing isn't so important. But we can't neglect the fact that we can develop relationships, we can qualify prospects, but if we're not then taking them to a closing phase, then we're just leaving money on the table and we're not really being a salesperson. So why is closing crucial? And also, why is it challenging? As I said earlier, it's the one thing that a lot of sales teams approach me for training for all the time. As always, I've got some statistics to share with you. This one's taken directly from HubSpot. We all know HubSpot. Some of us use HubSpot. 60% of all sales are lost because the salesperson fails to ask for the sale. So over half of sales are lost because the salesperson doesn't ask for the sale. They've done everything. They've qualified, they've prospected, and they've not closed a sale, so they've lost it. That's 60%. It's a high number. Now, here's a funny caveat to that. There are do you know what? I don't know the exact statistics of this, so please do. If someone knows the statistics, please send them in. I don't know how many salespeople there are in the world, or whether we call them SDRs, BDMs, however you want to wear them. Guess how many of those people are confident in their closing skills? Guess how many people in a percentage? Arguably, we gravitate towards 90%, right? We think, oh my God, yeah, salespeople, they're cocky, they're arrogant. I bet 90% of them are confident in their closing skills. Maybe half if we're sort of, sitting on the fence with things. What if I told you, though, only 10% of people, only 10% of salespeople are confident in their closing skills? That's insane, right? Only 10%. And hopefully, in listening to this podcast, we can boost some of that confidence. And hey, I'm going to throw this out on a whim. Perhaps you know someone who is unconfident in closing, maybe one of your sales team, maybe a colleague, maybe a client. If they're unconfident in closing, send them this podcast. So where do the challenges come from? Why are people scared of closing? Now, I believe that the biggest fear, and it's a fear we talk a lot of, and we've done a whole podcast episode on this, fear of rejection. Many people are scared of being rejected. And when we're scared of rejection, or when we're scared of anything, we don't want to do it, right? If we're scared of spiders, we're not necessarily going to put our hand into a hole full of spiders, right? It's natural or unnatural, one of the two, right? So we become scared, and the way for ourselves to kind of protect ourselves from that rejection is to not ask at all. And we see it so often with salespeople, right? And I've noticed maybe that you're guilty of this. And if you are guilty of this, I want you to tweak and change this little one thing today. Just do it today for me, okay? Many salespeople kind of leave the sale in the hands of their prospect. They say, if you're interested, you let me know. If you'd like to learn more, come back to me. Here's the quote or proposal. If you want to go ahead, come back to me. And then they quickly run away. They bury the email. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. We're going to stop and change doing that today. We're going to ask questions. We're going to ask for the sale in every kind of closing subject. Another reason why these challenges in closing happen is because we misjudge the timing. Sometimes, and there's ways we can kind of work this out, sometimes we ask for the sale or try and close a sale too soon. Okay, we ask for it too soon. We've not developed a relationship. We've not developed a rapport. We've not understood the needs, the wants, the pain points, maybe the desire points. Maybe we've not understood the buyer themselves, the kind of mentality that person is. We jump in too soon. Once again, many of us are very, very, very guilty of doing that. But also, here's the other thing that people forget about. Sometimes you can overcook the sale. Sometimes you can sort of do everything really, 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 really well, and you just nullify the sale because you've spoken too much, or maybe the desire levels have dropped. That's something we've got to bear in mind. And of course, maybe the failure to address key objections is a big thing for people trying to close sales. We just can't address those objections, so we struggle to make the sale. Now, with objections, we will be covering a whole episode very, very soon, just on objections, which I think is going to be a great episode. And I've no doubt probably our most listened to. So maybe that's you. Maybe you are sat there and maybe you're scared of being rejected. Maybe you're unsure when to close a sale. Maybe you're addressing objections wrong. We're going to talk about some ways in which you can close a sale more effectively. Just remember, a sale is not closing someone into a situation that they don't want to be a part of. Closing isn't selling ice to the Eskimos. Closing a sale isn't forcing someone to buy some double glazing from you when they own a brick house or whatever, right? Closing a sale is a win-win-win situation for everyone involved. And if you've done your job well as a salesperson, that becomes far easier before we even start to talk about these strategies. So I do a lot of sales training, right? I train, people all over the globe, individually, in teams. And whenever we get onto the sales training part of things, we always kind of talk about closing, and people get excited. They go, oh, this is the money maker. This is where my ROI comes from. I'm going to learn so much. Always be closing ABC, all that nonsense. And yes, there are some closing techniques I'm going to share with you today, the very top level. You would have heard of many of these before. But just remember, if you do everything else right, the sale kind of sells itself, right? The sale happens anyway. So let's look at strategy number one. We've got the assumptive close. Now, this is probably one you've already heard of, or maybe you've been sold to yourself. So what the assumptive close really is if you proceed as if the prospect is already decided. They've already made that decision to buy. You are assuming that they want your product or service. So, one example, when would you like us to start the implementation process? Would you prefer this in red or blue? Very, very assumptive closes. Why does it work? Well, it builds momentum and eliminates hesitation by just allowing that person to focus on the next thing. We are assuming that sale is going to happen. So we're removing all doubt and we're saying, look, when would you like this to start? Now, when we then look at statistics, these statistics are covered from Salesforce, once again, another great player in the CRM world and the SaaS world. Buyers are 32 times more likely, that's wrong, they're 32% more likely to commit when given a specific decision option. When we talk about objections, we talk about sometimes an overload, a fear of overwhelm, maybe an overload of features, of benefits, of panic. And what happens in that panic is buyers sometimes shut down. So the assumptive close is a good way of removing that doubt. And they're more likely to commit if they're given a specific decision option. Remember, that's 32%. So 32 out of 100. We've then got the summary close. Once again, a very common closing technique. So this one is where we recap the key benefits discussed and how they address the prospect's needs. So To summarize, with our solution, you'll save 20% on overhead costs and gain access to 24/7 support. Are you ready to move forward? We're going to cover off some of those benefits. We're going to run through those benefits. And then lo and behold, we're going to see if you're ready to buy. It works because it reinforces the value and it reassures the buyer. Every buyer will buy for their own desire levels, for their own pain points. We're just summarizing it and saying, look, can we go ahead? The key tip here is to tailor that summary to the buyer's unique concerns. Don't just kind of get a copy and paste closing technique. We've got to really prove to our buyer that we understand their needs, their wants, their desires, and objectives alongside their objections. Now, what about the urgency close? Once again, the urgency close is a big thing. When we go on to our objection training, we will learn that one of the biggest reasons why an objection occurs is because of a lack of urgency, a lack of hurry. And sometimes we need to incur that. Now, my caveat to this is always this. That urgency, that hurry must be genuine. You cannot make it up. Oh, we've only got one pallet left when he's sitting on 27 pallets, because it does you a disservice. You weren't brought up to be a liar. You weren't brought up to be a manipulator. Your parents would hate you for that. So why lie about it? But we can try and incur some urgency if that urgency is real. So we can emphasize deadlines. We can, talk about limited availability. So anything from, look, it's Black Friday at the time of recording this. Unfortunately, not the time of this podcast going out, but the time of recording, it's nearly Black Friday. So Black Friday is a good one. We could say, look, our prices are going to be going up in the new year. Why don't we act now? We'll get you signed in, then you won't have those price increases. So locking in will save an additional 10%, 20%, whatever it is. And remember, when we do this, it does motivate buyers to react quickly. Remember, one of the key reasons why a customer won't buy from you is because of a lack of urgency. Humans don't rush, do we? We sit on things, we think about things, we mull over things. So sometimes we need to prod, sometimes we need to push, sometimes we need to get that competitor, right? Sort of syndrome going on, or that competitive syndrome, I should say, going on. You need to act on this quick. Your competitors are already buying this from me and they're reaping rewards. You need to jump on this pretty damn quick. Let's sign you up tomorrow. We need to incur that urgency. And actually, once again, guess how many buyers say that a sense of urgency influences their purchasing decision? Have a guess. If you said 10%, you were wrong. If you said 50%, you were wrong. We're going higher. It's like Bruce's Price is Right, a very bargain edition, right? 89% of buyers say that urgency really helps persuade those decisions. So can you incur any urgency on your closing statement? If you can, go ahead with it. Now, I keep alluding and I keep hinting at this whole podcast, this whole episode talking about objections, and I want to keep it that way. But just remember, when you are closing a sale, you are going to face some kind of objection. It's very rare. It happens, but it's very rare where you don't try and sell something and an objection comes through. One of the key ways we can do this, and we're going to go through various objection handling techniques, is address any hesitations directly and turn them into an opportunity. We call this the flip method. It's kind of like the kind of spin doctors of politics in the 90s. You mentioned concerns about budget. We've directly talked about the objection. Would a flexible payment plan help make this a better fit? Boom, we've flipped that on its head. Sometimes we could flip that into a better statement along the lines of, you mentioned concerns about our pricing. I assure you, with our level of pricing, you get all this value on top. The reason we don't sort of discount here is because we deliver such good value with expertise. You could not discount this any further. Now, here's another statistics for you. 62% of buyers expect sales reps to proactively address objections, but only 35% feel reps do this effectively. So a lot of buyers kind of want you to respond, but only 35% feel that reps do it effectively. There's 75% of us out there that can do better at objection handling, hence why there will be an episode very soon all on objection handling. So remember, we've got the urgency close. We're going to incur that urgency. We've got the assumptive close. We're going to assume that the buyer already wants to buy. Or we got the summary close, where we're going to summarize all the key features, benefits, and the pain points of the buyer, and we're going to try and close. I've got various other closing techniques, and I'd love to share them with you. If you are interested, head on over to the Sales Circle Facebook group. Just search for the Sales Circle, join there, and I'll share them at some point in the near future. So there's some other tips and techniques, and I probably should have shared these before. The the closing statements. But there's kind of three key things that I always talk about when we talk about the psychology of closing. Okay. And number one is we need to understand buyer decision making. In an upcoming episode, I believe the next one, we're going to talk about different buyer types. And it's very important we understand the buyers that we're talking to without neglecting the fact that everyone's different. But buyers do need to feel confident. They need to make sure that they can trust you. They can trust the product, the solution, and trust all the benefits. They've got to believe in that solution. So remember, if you're pitching and you're not overcoming objections very well, there's no point in closing the sale, right? If we can build that trust, build that confidence, it makes the closing so much easier. Of course, we need emotional momentum. We know that actually people tend to buy things on emotional reaction more so than anything else. We buy on emotion. That's why buyer's remorse is such a thing, right? We've always bought weird things and we go, I shouldn't have bought that. I don't know why I've bought that. That's gathering dust, or it wasn't good enough. But at the time, our desire levels were so high. We had an emotional reaction to whatever it was that we go ahead and buy it. We've got to make sure that we nurture those emotional responses to whatever it is we're selling. And don't come at me going, oh, I sell B2B. There's no emotional response to health and safety services. There can be if you truly pitch it well enough. And finally, when you ask for the sale, don't forget silence is golden. Don't feel you need to fill the silence. There's that old story, isn't it, whether it's true or not, where some salesperson's trying to sell to a CEO and they sat in silence because they both knew the trick for, 12 minutes, 17 minutes, depending on where you heard it. And eventually the silence broke by the CEO saying, good work, I'll buy from you now. No need to fill the silence. If you make a statement, if you try and close, stay quiet. It's an awkward silence, but allow the buyer to be the next one to say something. And don't forget that generic pitches can make or break you. If you personalize your pitch, if you personalize your presentation, if you personalize everything, you're more likely to get the sale. And this is my bugbear with AI and automation. AI and automation will not close. AI and automation will not win relationships. Yeah, it'll be like sliding right on Tinder 100,000 times. You might get some matches, but are they going to become your partner, your spouse, or even a date? More than likely not. So go ahead out there. Think about how you can become an effective closer. Take some notes and we'll cover off some key stories in just a moment. Now, remember, we started this podcast talking about closing being one of the most scariest parts of the sales process. And many salespeople feeling scared about sales. And trust me, we've all been there. Even I myself used to be really scared about closing. Even now, I'll be honest, sometimes I go, oh, gosh, I don't dare do this. I can't find any rhythm or rhyme to it. Sometimes I feel really confident, others I don't. Sometimes it could just be the mood I'm in naturally. It could be whether I've eaten or not. It could be on a basis of how many other people I've tried to close and the success rates before then. I do not know. The thing with closing is this. You're not going to close a sale unless you ask for the sale. You only miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, right? We could use 1,000 sporting analogies, whether it's a footballer taking a shot or not taking a shot, whether it's Michael Jordan not taking a shot at the hoops. Apparently, and whether this is true or not, the reason Michael Jordan scored so many times is because he actually just tried. He had more attempts than anyone else. And it goes to show, right? You are not going to close sales unless you actually try. So if you're watching this as a salesperson that's struggling to hit their sales targets, think about how many times you've actually tried to close a sale. Can you improve that rate? Can you increase that rate? Are you just leaving proposals saying, if you're interested, come back to me and let me know. Thanks for your time. Or are you truly trying to get that sale? And the next thing I always recommend is practice. You're not going to score every single shot that you take. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. It's the rough with the smooth, right? You can't get everything in life. As long as we can learn from the mistakes or the sales that we didn't make, as long as we learn from them, let's keep going. You're not going to sell unless you try to close the sale. This podcast is brought to you by Paragon Creative Studios, a podcast creative studio based in the heart of Leicestershire in the UK, with plenty of space to hire out for podcast recording, video recording, and the expertise to help you produce your own podcast. Please visit paragoncreativestudios.co.uk. Oh, you know what I'm going to say here, don't you? This is my favourite part of the podcast. It is my favourite part of the podcast because it's the part of the podcast where you have written in some questions, some burning questions that you want to know the answers to. And I've picked out 3. Now, if you do want to send me a question, all you got to do is this. contact me on social media. If you search for the Sales Circle podcast on YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook, what have I missed out there? TikTok, LinkedIn, we are everywhere. Send us in a question. I'd love to read it out. Or of course, you can email thesalescircleofficial@gmail.com. Now I've picked out 3 questions here. So what's this first one? The first one's not got a name. How do I know when it's the right time to ask for the clothes? For the clothes, not the clothes, unless you're selling clothes. I don't know. The biggest thing is to look out for buying signals. Buying signals is probably an episode we should probably cover off individually. But buying signals, as a brief synopsis, are signals that we know that that buyer is ready to be closed. So sometimes it could be verbal, sometimes those could be non-verbal. So sometimes body language is a key thing. If I'm a buyer and I'm sat here, I'm actually looking quite negative anyway. If I'm sat here, my arms crossed, disassociated, checking my phone, looking around, maybe it's on a Zoom call and you can see that I'm working on another screen. Maybe I've not shown any interest in your brochure, that kind of thing. You know that I'm probably not interested or probably not interested yet. But then again, if my body language is open, if I'm showing interest, if I'm nodding, if I'm smiling, if I'm getting hold of your brochure and reading through it bit by bit, oh, wow, yeah, that looks great. Maybe I'm answering, some of the key benefits. Maybe I'm talking about the key benefits, talking about the key solutions that you can offer. Maybe I'm talking about pricing. They're all good buying signals. So look out for clues that your buyer is ready to buy. And when that happens, that's the time to try to close. This one's from Natalie. Thanks so much for sending this one in, Natalie. What should I do if a prospect says they need to think about it? Oh, what an objection, right? How many times have us as salespeople heard, I need to think about it, just need time to think, need to mull it over, right? And we'll probably cover this off in our main objection handling podcast, Natalie, but thank you so much. The key question that I put on all of my scripts and my flows that I write and I work with my clients on is don't be afraid of it. Man, we've got to acknowledge the objection. There's no such thing as a bad objection. Just because we don't believe in the objection doesn't mean that your prospect doesn't believe in the objection. So yeah, look, absolutely. This is a big decision. I want to make sure you get the right feeling for it. Just so I can help. What in particular do you need to think about? Or is there anything in particular that needs to be thought about? Or is there anything in particular that I've not clarified? Or maybe I can help you in this process. Words to that effect. We're not devaluing. We're not shying away from the objection. We're saying, yeah, absolutely. I want you to think about this. I don't want you to make the bad mistake. And to be fair, I've got a lot of customers who have once again told me the same. But just before we wrap this up, what in particular do you need to kind of just consider, just so I can know for next time, or I can help you out myself? Don't be afraid of it. You're going to hear it. You're going to hear it time and time again. This one here is from Tony. Thank you, Tony. Tony with an I. How do I handle prospects who keep delaying their decision? Oh, goodness. Once again, this happens again and again. Oh, now's not the right time. Come back to me in 6 weeks. Now's not the right time. Come back to me in 6 weeks. For me, I think that kind of thing, we can do things 2 ways. We can either A, question the objection. Say, look, I know, you keep saying this. I don't want to waste your time. I enjoy speaking with you. It's not that at all. But is this truly the right fit? Do you think a decision will be made? Or we can use the urgency close. Yeah, absolutely. I know you need to think about it, but listen, our prices will be going up in December. So you could actually save yourself 12% if you buy now. We don't have to deliver it for another sort of 6 months. If need be, we can hold on to it. But if I can get your order in today, I can confirm that I'll give you that 12% discount. How does that sound? And then we stay silent. We can use the urgency close for people like that. So 3 great questions. Thank you so much for sending those in. Really, really appreciated. Now, before we start to wrap up, because let me just check my trusty little stopwatch. We've only got about 5 or 6 minutes left. I want to talk to you about my book recommendation, which actually isn't in the room at the minute. I've got to run out of the office to go grab it. Give me 2 seconds and I'll be back. And as if by magic, the book has appeared. This week's book recommendation is written by me. Cringe, I know. A Month to Improve Your Sales. This is the last book I authored. There's more on the horizon, don't you worry. A Month to Improve Your Sales. This was authored by me several years ago. When was it done? 2019. And this has become my most popular book. People love it. And I think the reason why people love it and the feedback I've had is because it's a very simple, easy to read book. I read a lot of sales books, and some of them are easy, some of them are hard, some of them are a bit dull and boring. The idea with A Month to Improve Your Sales was to kind of create a sales guide, a sales book that could be your first. It should be easy to read, easy to understand. And within here, there are 31 chapters. So, as I'm sure you can imagine, the idea is you read one chapter every single day. It kind of screws up a little bit in February, to be honest. But you read a chapter a day, you increase your sales by utilizing the key hints, tips, skills that you learn within that chapter. So there's 31 chapters, about 200 odd words, 211 words, give or take, and various key tips. So whether you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, a CEO, this is a great book for you to kind of digest. So I'll read some of the blurb for you. With 31 chapters full of incredible tips, advice, and knowledge on sales, this is the only sales guide you need in your life. Whether you're a sales professional, business owner, entrepreneur, or similar, this book will help you to see an increase in your sales in just 31 days. For me, I really enjoyed putting this book together, and I wish I would have had this book when I started out in sales, because as I say a lot in this podcast, we should be learning, we should be adapting, we should be encouraging knowledge within sales. But once again, some books are really heavy. If you look at last week's book recommendation, still a great book, The Sales Bible, go check it out. It's a hefty book, right? You're busy. You should be closing. This, without sounding crude, you could take it on the toilet, read a chapter whilst you're doing what you need to do, and you're absolutely sorted. But it covers everything from cold calling, objection handling, networking. It talks about consultative selling, test closes, buying signals, staying healthy. That was written by a good friend of mine. Telesales, as I said, public speaking, handling rejection, sales call reluctance, social selling. Each chapter is like a key element to your sales toolbox. So please do go check it out. It's available on Amazon. I'll drop a link below, and I'd love to know your thoughts. And that just about wraps us up for another episode of the Sales Circle. Thank you for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. This episode has absolutely flown by, and I couldn't do it without you. Wherever you're listening in the world, whatever you're doing, I truly appreciate you, and I'm truly thankful of you. Please do get out there and utilize some of these sales skills and techniques. There's one thing being motivated, there's one thing being inspired, but there's another thing doing. And what I hope is, even if there's just one thing in this podcast that you think, wow, actually, I'm going to try that. Actually, Rob's right. I'm going to give that a go. If you can do that and you can make a sale and you make a return on investment just by listening to this podcast, let me know. Don't worry, I don't need a commission, but just let me know. I'd love to hear about it. As always, please do stay in touch. We are everywhere on social media. You cannot escape me. You cannot escape the Sales Circle. Make sure you give us a follow, though. Share the podcast. Share our posts with as many people as you can. Let's improve salespeople, because if salespeople improve, everyone improves. I'm so thankful that you were able to join us today in the Sales Circle. Until next time, all the best. And that's it for another episode of the Sales Circle. Make sure you hit that follow button, join us over on social media, and we'll see you next week.